And we want to say a big welcome to the show to Byron Clark, who's been out and about causing trouble tonight. Byron, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, good. As you know, I got a call from a mate of mine who was down at a certain protest with you. And so I thought once I saw that you guys were there protesting Julian Batchelor, that perhaps what we should do is grab you on tonight and have a look at what went on. So this is you at the protest tonight. We're seeing it on Twitter for people who are watching. Is there a reason that you blurred out the faces? Is that because they just didn't want to be seen? Or is it just being extra safe?
Just being extra safe. I mean, you never know who's looking at who's there, and can't be too careful these days. So I've tried to get a few photos of some of the flags and the banners, and without making people too identifiable.
All right, so let's have a look at a quick video that you shot while you were down there as well. Here's a quick video of the protest tonight. How many people?
I would estimate about, I tried to do a bit of a head count, I'd say maybe 150.
Yep. And you got a good feed as well, it would appear?
Got a good feed, yeah. I picked up a few scoops of chips on the way, and pizza had been ordered, and yeah, someone even had a big pot of pumpkin soup they'd come around with, and bowls and everything, yeah.
And Te Pāti Maori were there in force?
They were, yes, yep. I mean, they had their Te Tai Aotearoa candidate, Te Tai Tonga candidate, which in the South Island Maori electorate. He was there speaking to the crowd, so good to see him there supporting it.
And last video here, let's just put this up quite quickly to have a look what was going on.
Why are they not letting you in? They're not letting me in because why aren't you letting me in? Why aren't you letting me in? No, they don't have to answer to me.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll take that down as well because the fantastic music you're playing in the background will get us kicked off YouTube. Now tell me, so 150 strong-ish outside, how many inside?
I'm not entirely sure. One person who was inside to ask some questions said that it was a packed hall. Another person said there were only about 30 people in there, which could be a packed hall. It's not a very big hall. So I think there's a good chance that at this event, Batchelor and his crowd were outnumbered by the protesters outside, which is encouraging.
Now, you're based in Christchurch. Was this just something that you got involved in because it was local? Is this something that's a more organised event happening and following these speeches around?
Yeah, so I mean, everywhere Julian Batchelor goes, he's met with opposition. In some places, it's been quite well organised. In other places, I think it's more people just turning up to have a say. Sometimes finding they don't get let into the event. The one here in Christchurch was organised by, I think, a few different groups got involved. Like I say, they'd arranged for like pizza and music and all that sort of thing. So, it'd been a few people working on this behind the scenes. Not something I was that involved with myself, but people I know were, and it came together really well and got a bigger turnout than I was expecting.
And give us a sense, for those of us who haven't been to the protests, or maybe there's some people watching who haven't entirely kept up with what's going on, what is Julian Batchelor's tour about, as you know it, and why is there a need to protest it?
Yeah, so Batchelor's doing this whole tour around the theme of opposing co-governance. And co-governance is one of those things that it's been used as a bit of a buzzword, but people are reluctant to define it. Co-governance is something that's been happening for about a decade. Some treaty settlements have led to partnerships between iwi and the Crown, or between local government and iwi, managing different resources. And there's a push to have more of this, more of these kind of agreements. Batchelor is, I would say, not just opposing that, but promoting a very colonial worldview at these events. I've been reading some of the reports just in the media from his other tour stops. I've found he uses the phrase Zimbabwe of the South Pacific quite a lot. This idea that co-governance and honouring the treaty is something akin to Zimbabwe, and that's a very charged comparison to make, because of course Zimbabwe is the country that exists after Rhodesia ended white minority rule. And I see this from people further right than Julian Batchelor, using this comparison, and it's kind of a way of dog whistling. Things got so much worse once the white people weren't in charge anymore. So, I see him going and talking to in some cases quite big audiences, and saying we're becoming the Zimbabwe of the South Pacific, and using language like comparing Maori to plagues of locusts. And he's an evangelical preacher, so for someone from that background, this language is quite meaningful to use these kind of biblical metaphors. So so there's a real concern about the kind of ideology that he's spreading, and what he's fomenting in an election year, but I think for politics wider than just the election as well.
Do you think people know enough about his evangelical background? Because I know a lot about it, about his evangelical background. Do you think that plays a part in this? So, for example, Julian Batchelor used to be involved with a group called Operation Jerusalem. Operation Jerusalem in the 1990s was a group of anyone is of my ilk, my age, that used to send groups out to all the groups of like young people, teenagers in the early 20s, to all the camping grounds around the top half of the North Island during the Christmas, New Year period to run children's programs, which were indeed, of course, a funnel to Christian teachings. That's his background from the 1990s. He's a fairly wealthy man. Certainly lived in. I've actually been to his house. I had a friend who was staying with him for a while in St Heliers in Auckland. So I know quite a lot about his background. Do you think his background has much to do, should be more known about compared to who he is today and what he's talking about? Because I've said this before, the kind of religious ideology he espouses is not a particularly good representation of the teachings of the head of the church he said to follow, being that character of Jesus Christ. It's kind of the opposite of that. Is there a connection between these two things, do you think? Is this part of, you've written books, and in your book, you talk a bit about I'm using the word Christian militants. I don't think that's a word you have used. Is he one of them, and do we need to expose this some more?
I think that's definitely something that people need to know more about and needs to be looked into a bit more. You probably know more than me about his particular evangelical background. But like you said, I wrote about the Christian right in my recent book, and there is some real overlap between some of the things that these evangelical Christians believe and some of what the alt-right is espousing. And if you believe that this is a land that is given to us by God for Christians, and that it's not a land that we should have Muslim migration to, and that sort of thing, you're saying some very similar things to others on the far right who may have came to those views not from a religious background, but from a more nationalistic one or what have you. But there's so much overlap there, and I think that Batchelor talking about co-governance leading us to becoming Zimbabwe or the South Pacific, or making reference to like civil war and that sort of thing. I think that's not unconnected to the evangelical background he comes from. So I think that's definitely a relevant part of the story that I think even people going along to his meetings and being supportive of what he's saying maybe don't know that part of his background so much.
They probably wouldn't care. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, even if you're someone who in fact, I saw a poll somewhere. I can't even remember what it was, but it was on Twitter today. I should go and find it and bring it to the end of the show. They said something like, would you support a Nazi ideology if it got rid of gender reaffirming surgery? And it was like an 80% support said yes. And it was like 10,000 votes. So, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think the people who want to stop co-governance, whatever sort of amorphous word that means to them, wouldn't care about the person's background as long as they're spouting that rhetoric to get them what they want.
Yeah, I think there's few people who'd be put off by his evangelical background if they're in agreement with him about what he's saying about co-governance and decolonization and so forth.
Hey, dude, thank you so much for jumping in. And
no problem.
I don't know if Leon's still watching, but Leon, kia ora cards, thanks for giving us a call this evening, and good to see you all doing the hard mahi up there, not down there, up there, because I'm in Dunedin. But always good to chat, Byron, and we will talk again super soon. Thanks for being with us tonight, man.
Wonderful. Thank you.